When it comes to budget PC cases, there's a huge variety of them, but not all of them are equally viable. So today, I'm gonna compare an Ebola budget case to a not Ebola budget case. The two cases that are going to be flung into our deathmatch arena of death is the Deepcool Matrix 30 and the Thermaltake H17. Now straight off the bat, I just want to say that these two cases don't cost exactly the same amount. It's a bit difficult to get accurate prices of components online at the moment, but this Ebola case goes for around $40 normally, whereas this beautiful, not Ebola case normally goes for about $50. So it does mean that the one case does have a bit of a price advantage over the other one, but I would still definitely consider them both budget cases, and this is all I have to work with. I can't exactly go out and buy a new case at the moment, can I, Gary? So with the disclaimer out of the way, let's get into the comparison. Now this Deepcool Matrix 30 on paper looks like a really good case for the price. I mean, it's got tempered glass in it, which is already actually, in my opinion, that's a bit of a dead giveaway if a really budget case has a tempered glass side panel, but on paper, that looks exciting. It's also got some front ventilation, which is something that the Thermaltake H17 doesn't really have. So it looks as though maybe this may be a very good option. And if you look at the reviews on Amazon of this case, they're very positive, although I can't find them now because the product page of this isn't up. Whereas when you move over to the Thermaltake H17, on paper, it doesn't look particularly interesting. It doesn't have a windowed side panel, it doesn't have any RGB in it, and it doesn't have particularly good front airflow, which does mean if you put a beefy system in here, it really struggles to keep it cool. However, there's one thing that this Thermaltake H17 has in spades, and that is ease of building. This is one of the easiest cases to build in that I've pretty much ever experienced. And if the front airflow is an issue, if you want to put a more powerful system than just a Ryzen APU based one in it, just get the H18 version, it costs the same, and it's got a perforated front, and it comes with an acrylic side panel. It's not tempered glass, but you know, that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make. So let me show you the difference between building in this case and building in this one. When it comes to the Thermaltake H17, one of the things that makes it so easy to build in is this power supply basement over here. If you're building a more budget-oriented PC, you're most likely not going to have a modular power supply in there, so you're going to have a whole wad of cables that you're going to have to hide somewhere. Whereas as you can see on this Deepcool case, it's open, you can see the cables, and because it's not got very much cable management room around the back of the motherboard tray, it's quite difficult to hide the cables. You kind of just have to stuff it in this kind of hard drive cage. And not only does it make it more difficult to just hide your cables generally, but it also makes it more difficult to install the power supply, because you have this tiny hole that you need to get all of the cables in the power supply through, and then once they're through, when you want to put the case flat down on a table to actually get your motherboard in, you've got a bunch of cables that you need to deal with and it won't go flat, so you actually have to route it back out through this hard drive cage, and then you have to reroute it after you've got the motherboard tray in. It's a huge pain in the butt. Another issue is that because this case is so small and because of where this hard drive cage is, it's really difficult to get your motherboard into the actual case because, well, there isn't really space for it and you kind of have to wedge it in at an angle and it feels like you're just gonna break everything. Whereas with the Thermaltake H17, you just kind of put the power supply in, tuck the cables under here, and then just pop your motherboard in. Like, it really couldn't be easier. And there's also a lot more space behind the motherboard tray for cable management for all of the cables that you're not hiding in the basement. Now, there are a couple of hilarious things that make cable management even more difficult in this Matrix 30. One is if you have an MATX motherboard in here, you actually cover up most of the cable routing holes. So you have to use this one hole to route your 24-pin cable, your 8-pin CPU cable, because again, there's not a cutout in the top for that, and your graphics card cable and everything else that you need to route into the into the main area of the case. It's just like Surely they could have done that better, right? And then the final issue with the cable management in this case is the fact that the lack of basement means it's really difficult to get your front I/O cables to the motherboard neatly. So let's have a quick look at what the same system looks like in these two cases. As you can see in the Thermaltake H17, it's all neat and beautiful and very much not Ebola looking. Whereas if you move over to the Matrix 30, yeah, that's the best I could do. Honestly, I did genuinely try to make it look nice, but it's very difficult to do. And then, because it's got a tempered glass side panel, you're always gonna see it. So they actually should have swapped it around. This one should have had the tempered glass side panel on it because it looks really nice inside. Whereas this one should have had a solid side panel because no matter how good you are at cable management, you're not gonna be able to make it look nice enough that you're actually gonna want people to see inside it, you know? So as you can tell from this video, most of the reason why I'm ragging on this little Deepcool case is because the building experience in it is really terrible. And you may be sitting there thinking, well, you build the PC once and then you use it for like 3 years. Why is that such a big deal? The thing is, if you're a budget builder that's not really had much experience with building a PC before and you're still quite scared of doing it, this is not going to inspire confidence. It's not an easy, fun process. Whereas building, even for a beginner in this case, is really fun, easy, and there's not much hassle to it. And then there's also other stuff like material choices. Yeah, the tempered glass seems fancy, but the actual metals and plastics in this case, they just suck. They're really terrible. And it's really easy to cut yourself on corners and stuff with this case. It's just not pleasant. Whereas this case, everything's rounded off nicely. It's fairly sturdily built. The plastics are more solid. It's a pretty well-made case for a $50 case. So in short, if you look at these two cases as pound puppies, this case is like the most photogenic pound puppy you've ever seen. It just strikes that magnum pose in every photo. But then when you get it to your house, it turns out that it's got the worst diagnosed case ever of irritable bowel syndrome. I mean, it is essentially a waste treatment site on legs. Whereas this Thermaltake case is a bit like a 5-year-old dog that maybe has an eye missing. It's not the most attractive puppy, but when you get it into your house, after a couple of months, you realize that it's got the smallest, most manageable poopies ever. So even if it catches on fire, if it runs too far, I know which one I'd rather live with. With that, let me know in the comment section below what cases you've built in recently and if it was a nice or a terrible building experience. I'm just curious to see what you think about various cases as well. And that brings me to the end of the video. So I hope that all of you stay safe. Thank you very much for watching the video, and until the next video, bye-bye.